Oh, come on in. Family, come on in. If you don't know, better ask somebody. If you guys mind sharing this out to the whole world. I'm going to take my time and let you guys come on in. Maybe let you see some of my rocks. Yes, let's see. It's after 5 on the East Coast. So I guess it's still a little early yet. So then I guess I'm going to have to say hi to all my replay viewers. Come on in. This is all stuff I've just found here, right around here in the Idaho, Oregon border. I am operating on a little bit of lack of sleep. I have had a little, but not a lot. I worked last night. And then I had a lot of shit to do today, because my grandbaby will be here in a few hours. So, I wanted to squeeze in part 3 of the epic. Yes, I said epic. Through 8 pages. This shit has been epic. A fantastic memoir, I guess. Oh, Jesus. Don't let anything happen to this precious piece of history, Smooch. See, that's also why I do this around all my rocks. Because I can show off my rocks. Oh, that sounded terrible. While holding the pages down. But for those that are just joining that haven't witnessed part 1 or 2 of this journey, Jesus, I did it again. That was smooth. And that is the thing about the Northwest that just never stops. God damn it, it's like windy all the time. Forgive me, Lord, I didn't mean that. But it is windy all the damn time. Alright, let's see. Look down, there's 7 now. Holy crap, everybody's busy. That's all good, though. This is a replay type broadcast, so if anybody don't know, I am Smooch Panda. Been doing this little Periscope thing since August of 2017. Nope, July, actually. And right after that, met the awesome group of people I call MAGA Fam. The MAGA Coalition, Dixie Cup Nation, you guys rock. This is a little bit of non-political stuff, so, I got to give my shout-outs. I love you guys. Winning has been so much fun, and it just continues. I won't address much the insanity that came out of the Diltards channel yesterday. Other than to say, I haven't given that dude a whole lot of thought. I love the fact that I live rent-free in that fucker's head for a very long time. Not just me, of course, my fam. And that was fucking funny shit. I'm a little offended. Keith Ellison, dude? I mean, resist is one thing, but damn, you had to throw that commie bastard at me? Oh well. I will say this. I have, 10 times more cred than Brendan Dildo Scammons Dilly. And that's all that I am going to say about that tard. He's really irrelevant. Alright, come on. 90 years in Texas. Alright, guys, unfortunately, if you are following along, then you've noticed on YouTube, part 2 has not been posted, and it's because Periscope, man. Fucking immigrants. Apparently, this new call-in feature, when you allow the call-in feature, it will not save the broadcast to your phone. It says it will. In the settings, yeah, it's set up to do that. Doesn't happen. The only broadcast I saved is the one that I actually had it turned off. So this broadcast is turned off. The long and the short of that is, I don't know if I can just, take that one or not, but I really think that a couple pages ain't going to hurt. So I will start from where I left off after part 1 and do a little part 2 and 3. In the 30-minute episode that I did that is on Periscope, it's just not on YouTube, we broke down some of the paragraphs and, conversed and talked about it. This time I'll just read it. It's great reading. If you guys are just coming in, this is a personal history that was told to A.B. Ward's granddaughter. Now you say, who is A.B. Ward? Some famous Civil War general? No, he's a regular guy. But boy, his life could fill up many books. Just with the travails that they dealt with in that day and age. So born in 1852, right after Texas pretty much became a state. I think a couple years at that point. If you did miss part 1, then go to YouTube. Check it out. It's a bunch of almost like short stories, but in a numerical type order. And I'm gonna find where I was. So please don't get sick with all the movement for now. If Adam watches this, thank you very much for those freaking couple awesome kick-ass scopes and for keeping us ahead of the game all the way through. But last night, man, that was good. And before I get into the book, I'm gonna address this. If you guys are new to my channel, this is how it is. I'm all over the place. I'm everywhere. I'm sporadic. Call me ADD. Call me whatever you want. It's the Smooch Pando channel. If you're hearing me without interruption, then you are already ahead of the game because I buffer. And it's something I've been working on, man. But, shit, nobody's perfect. Anyway, last night, Adam had a caller on. I totally suggest, if you hadn't seen it, go to gingrich_of_PA, Twitter timeline, or his Periscope. And you'll see a video where basically he's talking to a former Q, a non-believer, true believer. And it was the best. It wasn't a debate of ideas. It was just frank talk on how she can completely relate to what she was feeling and how things turned for her. And, tried to say, hey, maybe we should go back to being a little nicer. From a fam that knows me, this would be the second or third or fourth time I've had to come to grips with this Q LARPing bullshit, man. And lately, if I've offended any of you, well, that's none of my business, but I ain't trying to, except for the fucking Q people. And I'm a little too harsh on that. And sometimes I'm a little crude. And it's because I've got, 2 years of fighting these bastards under my belt. Not just fighting them, my God, man. If these tards just did a little research, that's what's infuriating. God dang, everything that we've done over the last couple of years, it's all documented. Every freaking scope. Do some research. Jesus Christ, Q did a goddamn Q drop on us and told you guys to investigate shit. I guess you didn't find much. But that's the thing about the QAnon movement. They don't research. They rely on people who told them they researched. And I met a freaking guy that's going to be premiering soon to Twitter and Periscope. And Q sent him. And his name is Jimmy Dean. And he's just defending Dilly and everything else. But that's a different story for a different time. Now we're going to get into the book. In Texas. Jeez, it's awful windy today. Hold on a sec, please. I believe it was on page 4 after the first. And I'm going to edit this out, and it's going to look all professional and stuff by the time it makes it to YouTube. Yeah, right. If anybody is in any of the chat rooms that I am in, please share it to that chat room, as I am unable to do that from my phone. I think he had just shot the gun. The one with the special load. The squirrel gun. His stepdad had a special load of shot for the Jayhawkers, who were basically just, people murdering in the name of the Confederacy if you badmouthed them. But, like I said, catch the first if you missed it. Yes, I think that's where I was at. Yeah, I'd like to know, and I actually asked Al. This memoir belongs to Al Mack. He's one of my neighbors. He's 77, and this is his great-grandfather. So I asked him what was in that squirrel rifle that was considered a special load. Months later, Ma had Tom. Let's see. I don't know if it's better. You guys tell me if it's better to do it like this. It's probably better like that, huh? Because I'm just holding this shit for you. Dang. Alright. Months later, Ma had Tom and I take the squirrel rifle out and discharge the special load, as she was afraid to have the gun around the house with that load in it. We placed the gun on a rock and rolled... Cool, because I'm holding it, Nick. I'm going to have to change positions here in a minute, but I wanted to get through this page and start this process, because I've been rambling. Alright, months later, we had to go to there. We placed the gun on a rock and rolled another large one on top, then got behind a tree to pull a string attached to the trigger. We discharged the gun, but it kicked clear of the large rock from the heavy recoil. A herd of cattle had been gathered in South Texas and driven as far as Round Rock, Texas, before the war ended. They were turned loose there to roam the woods. They had been intended for the soldiers of the Southern Army. What's up, Doug? We are reading a kick-ass piece of history that my neighbor blessed me with to borrow. This is the life, I don't say life story, because this isn't a professional book. This is a bunch of stories. Oh, no, you're good. I don't mind recapping. Everyone else hates you, though. A.B. Ward. And hey, this is the third episode, but we've only got like 8 pages into this thing, and I'm rereading the last 4. But this guy at 90 years old, lived in Texas his whole life, born in 1852, told this story to his granddaughter, who typed it out, and that's what I'm holding right here in front of you, what you're reading. Typed in 1942, the story of A.B., and I am rereading these last 4 pages because they're that fucking good, so just stay there for a minute. Alright. Let's see here. At the close of the Civil War, Indians took advantage of the preoccupation of the white people to increase their raids upon the settlers along the frontier of Texas, raiding as far eastward as Liberty Hill, where my grandfather Miller lived. 2 children were stolen from their homes near him. They were out playing when the Indians caught them. I wonder if they're playing cowboy and Indians. Oh, too high digress. Oh, I was terrible. Was it too soon? A searching party was organized to follow the Indians' trail. They were not successful in catching the raiders, but they found the body of the little boy. He had been placed against a tree and apparently used as a target for practice. Arrows were sticking in the tree as well as a number still in the body of the little boy. The little girl was never heard from again. I did see that there's a Trump rally, so if he starts going, I'll probably stop. So if somebody give me that heads up. That's crazy. See, you come in right then, and I just smacked you with a little story. Target practice. The Johnson family, living about 15 miles from Liberty Hill, was attacked by Indians. Mr. Johnson, his wife, and small baby had been visiting and was returning home when the Indians appeared on their trail. They were riding horseback, the usual mode of travel. The muster. I'm going to take a sip and try and keep it to where you can read ahead if you want. The mother must have realized their capture was inevitable, for she tossed the baby into a treetop as she passed where it lay, unnoticed by the Indians. When the Johnsons were missed, a searching party set out to look for them. It's windy, so I'm using my cool rocks and petrified wood and shit to hold it. They found the man and woman was found lying. Let's see if I can get you there. There we go. Where the Indians had slain them. The party supposed the Indians had carried the infant off and was returning when they heard the baby crying and found it in the treetop where it had been tossed by its mother. My mother's uncle, Joe Miller, his sons at Voca, Texas, in McCulloch County, were in constant fear of the Indians. I'm trying to read it through the screen so we have the same experience here. I don't know if my lighting's bad or not, but it ain't working for me. Okay. So they were scared, man. They were scared of them Injuns. Although most raids were carried out at night, during the light of the moon, at least one raid was attempted in daylight. Uncle Joe, his grandson, 12-year-old Zach, and several men were cradling wheat. They would cut a swath across the field and stop to sharpen their blades. On this particular occasion, they stopped on the opposite side of the field from the house. Before they knew what was happening, Indians swarmed over the fence almost upon them. One man was answering the call of nature. Oh, there's always one. In a corner of the fence when an Indian landed beside him. Startled, he sprang up, only to find himself hobbled. His pants had fallen around his ankles. The Indian paid no attention to him, however, but dashed for the small group of men and Zach. The man lost little time in ridding himself of his hobbles and running for the house. In fact, he was the first one to arrive there and took refuge in a tool shed where he remained until supplied with more pants. The boy Zach found it hard to keep up with the men. His grandfather would carry him as far as he could, then set him down to run beside the men, alternating until they finally neared the house. Putting Zach down, Uncle Joe ran on to get his gun. One Indian singled out the boy and began shooting at him. Zach would stop and hunch up his shoulders when the Indian fired, and then run on. When Uncle Joe reached the yard gate, he was met by his daughter-in-law with his gun. As she ran back into the house, an Indian's bullet tore a hole in the skirt of her dress. Damn. Shootout. Uncle Joe shot the Indian after Zach, then all ran into the house for protection against the Indian's bullets. None had been wounded. However, after they were inside the house and shooting at the Indians through loopholes between the logs, a bullet struck the opposite wall and ricocheted, hitting John Miller in the neck and felling him like a polled ox. The bullet had creased him without breaking the skin. He had been knocked unconscious by a bullet, but had no wound to prove it. That's my kind of luck. The Indians soon gave up the siege and left, carrying their dead companion with them. Excuse me. Uncle Joe Miller's son, Harvey, I'm not sure, lived a short distance from him. He had a fine saddle horse that the Indians tried to steal several times. He kept the horse tied to a corner of the house where he could watch him. One moonlight night, he heard a noise that sounded like a hog grunting and rooting its way across the yard. As its zigzag path led almost directly to the horse, Harvey became suspicious and fired. An Indian was killed by his shot. He left the body lying, afraid to go outside until morning. But by morning, the dead Indian had disappeared. Dang, that's deep. All right, before I turn the page, I'm going to grab a little water. We had some Idaho's doing shit right, man. Check my my recent tweets and you'll know what I'm talking about. All right. I guess I should look at the comments too. Yeah, somebody let me know if when Trump goes live, and you guys let me know if you're going to go watch it or if you want me to keep reading. I got a little bit of time. So after watching 200 plus rallies, I don't have to catch every single one anymore. I love my Trump. Okay. Another of Uncle Joe's sons. Oh, freaking awesome, Aussie! That's kick-ass. Alright, let's see if I can do this. Okay. Another of Uncle Joe's sons, Bill, accompanied by a man named Morrow, took a load of grain to mill for themselves and several neighbors. The settlers had to cooperate. Jesus Christ, boy, they can't even do that in this day and age. The settlers had to cooperate in order to protect their homes and themselves from the Indians. When one went to mill, he usually took his neighbor's grain also. Bill Miller and Morrow had begun their return trip with the meal and flour when a party of Indians in war paint came up behind them. Morrow drove the team while Bill loaded their 2 cap-and-ball pistols and fired at the Indians. The Indians were using arrows. A wooden trough was in the wagon. It was swung to the wagon tongue at feeding time to hold the horse's grain. Morrow clasped the trough with one arm, holding it in front of both men as a breastwork while he drove with the other hand. What the fuck? In reloading, one gun was dropped, and the Indians picked it up. Then Bill cut the horses loose from the wagon, mounting one, while Morrow rode the other. Jesus, I've seen that in the movies. An arrow struck Morrow's horse, causing him to pitch Morrow off. Bill ordered him to climb up behind him, but Morrow said, "Go on, Bill, I'm killed." He had not even been hurt. Bill helped him up on the horse, and they succeeded in reaching a thicket where they took refuge. Kind of reminds me of a certain group of people. I'm not keeping this political. All right. Bill had been wounded 28 times. Was that all? And lost much blood. When night fell, he asked Morrow to go to a spring not far from the thicket for water. However, Morrow refused. I wonder if he said tomorrow. Sorry, guys. However, Morrow refused, saying he would never make it there and back. Bill then crawled to the fucking spring himself, and after drinking his fill, pulled off his boot and took it back full of water to Morrow. When the searching party found them, Morrow had one wound. Wow. I guess that's a way to call someone a coward without actually calling him a coward. Or maybe he did. Let's see. When anyone was out and failed to return home at the appointed time, a searching party was always organized to look for them. So when Bill and Morrow failed to return by dark with their load of meal and flour, their friends knew the Indians had attacked and set out to look for them. They found all the meal and flour poured out upon the ground along the trail. When they came to the abandoned wagon, their fears for the safety of the 2 men increased. Bill Miller was pretty weak from loss of blood when the searching party finally found them in the thicket. He was carried home and eventually recovered, but carried an Indian spike on his lung. His death several years later was caused by pneumonia and complications, which the doctor said were produced by that spike, or the spike. Cool. Hey, share it out if you're enjoying it. After moving to Morriltown, Ma did not spin her thread. Instead, she rode to Bastrop, where a thread factory had been established, and bought her thread in bales or hanks. L.A. Child told me a hanks is like a ponytail worth of thread. So that was cool knowledge. The round trip took 3 days riding horseback, with the women mounted on side saddles, while we boys always accompanied them on bareback. I say we boys, for quite often Mother and I was accompanied by a neighbor woman and her son. The women would ride along, paying little attention to their 2 sons. We were glad of that, and often took advantage of their inattention to slip into a melon patch along the way. It was upon such an occasion that I found out about pie melons. We had dropped far behind our mothers, and I slipped down the cotton row while the other boys held our horses. While the other boy held our horses. My lighting sucks. I'll do better later. After rolling that melon in front, while I snaked along on my stomach for several hundred yards, my mouth was watering in anticipation of the feast. I believe I was more disappointed than my friend when all our efforts failed to burst that melon. We finally had to give up the feast and ride after our mothers, as they were far ahead by that time. We rode on wondering just what kind of trick had been played on us. When we returned home, one of the girls would help Mother thread the loom from the bales or hanks of thread. Then the house would resound with the thump of an old loom as Ma cast the shuttle back and forth, wielded the beater, and stomped the heavy treadle, weaving 2 and 3 yards of cloth in a day. Soon after the war ended, Ma decided to visit her sister in Arkansas and bring back a load of apples to store for the family and to sell. So she, Tom, and Sister Fanny set out in a wagon for Fayetteville. Not long after they left, Mr. Thomason, that's his stepdad, thought he would like to visit his son living somewhere in Arkansas, and followed Ma in another wagon, intending to bring back another load of apples. I'm gonna grab my drink real quick, if you don't mind. I get dry quick out here. Water does the body good. Okay. That left my second sister and I. Come on, focus. Focus, bitch. Wasn't talking to you guys. Let me try and change my lighting, maybe. I think that's what I'm going to do. We're relocating. We're moving on up to the east side. I don't know why I decided that I needed to do this uncomfortably. I'll get better as I go. I'm sorry, I'm not the reader that Crazy Amy World was reading Hillary. I mean, that's interesting reading, right? There we go, now you can see it. And I can see it. That left my second sister and I alone, as my oldest sister had married and moved away. There was a widowed daughter of Mr. Thomason's living near, but we were to remain at home and look after the stock in our house. I seized the opportunity to take my stepfather's squirrel rifle and go hunting. I loaded the gun myself, but when I put in 1 measure of powder, it didn't seem sufficient. So I just added another, for good measure. Oh, I see what you did there. I never saw a squirrel all afternoon. I did see a crow. I braced the gun against the tree and pulled the trigger. When the smoke cleared away, I was lying upon the ground. The crow had disappeared, and so had the lock and cap tube. I got up, brushed myself off, picked up the gun rather gingerly, and examined the extent of the damages. I knew the gun had better be fixed before my stepfather returned. Luckily, a Swede neighbor, cuckoo, cuckoo, was enough gunsmith to replace the lock and tube. When it had been repaired, I hung it up on the pegs, knowing Mr. Thomason would notice the new pieces the moment he got home. He did. "Who's been fooling with my gun?" was the first thing he asked. I answered him truthfully and added that I had risked being killed by it. He did not say anything more, and the episode was forgotten, except that I had learned a lesson that I never forgot. I got off lighter than I had expected. Sometimes later, Tom and I was shocking wheat near the house of our widowed stepsister. There was a recently freed Negro who was helping us. He was staying with his former owner, Mr. Blair. He asked us if the widow really lived alone with just the 2 small daughters. We told him that she did, whereupon he said he would scare her some night. We told him to stay away or he would get his head shot off. He only laughed at our warning. Awesome. Catch the replay, everyone who can't stay. It's all good, and I will be uploading this to YouTube as well at the Smooch Panda channel. Go ahead and go on over there sometime. Like, subscribe, all that cheesy shit. But if you do that, it helps me, actually. I need to get to 1,000. When I get to 1,000, I can live stream through YouTube through my phone. Their rules are stupid, but what the fuck. So probably sometime next decade I'll get there. On Saturday night, he asked Mr. Blair for a bronc to ride to town and for permission to stay overnight with his young master, meaning Mr. Blair's son, living in Round Rock, Texas. Both requests were granted, and the Negro rode away. He did not go to town, however. Instead, he rode through the woods to within a short distance of the widow's house and tied the horse to a tree. He waited there until darkness fell and the widow and little girls blew out their light. He broke in the door and attempted to attack the woman. Her screams aroused Mr. Thomason. He, Tom, and I ran to their aid, but the Negro heard us coming and disappeared. He frightened the horse in his haste to get away, causing it to break loose. Mr. Thomason sent Tom and I to the preacher's son's home across the field to tell him what had happened. He brought a bloodhound to the scene and gave it the Negro's scent at the tree where the horse had been tied. The dog trailed the Negro through the woods straight to Mr. Blair's corn crib, where he lay asleep. About 30 men had joined the hunt by the time the Negro was found. The men dragged him out and tied him on his bronc despite his pleadings and protestations. The horse was led to a leaning pecan tree in the creek bottom. The preacher, brother of the attacked woman, climbed the tree, fastened one end of the rope around the Negro's neck and the other around the tree. The horse was led from under him, leaving him dangling. As I watched the proceedings and the struggles of the strangling Negro, I could not help thinking how swift and harsh his punishment, although I knew his unprovoked attack upon a helpless woman merited punishment. They did not cut the body down, but left it there as an example to the Negro population of the county who might not know limits of their recently gained freedom. It was not, it was not long afterward that Tom and I was chopping corn when we saw a flock of birds sitting on a limb of a tree. Boy-like, we began throwing rocks at them, forgetting our hose in the new diversion. Our stepfather was plowing near and brought his horsewhip over to put us back to work. Whether or not I thought him justified in taking the law into his own hands and hanging the Negro, I certainly resented the whipping he gave us for fooling away time from work, as he termed it. I left home vowing vengeance and never returned until Ma left Mr. Thomason to move to Arkansas. Wow. Anybody's just joining, this is a personal history of this Rico Suave looking dude right here. That is Aaron Burleson Ward. You can catch prior episodes on my Periscope and my YouTube. That's pretty cool. The hanging's not very cool. That was kind of freaky, but, you know. Another thing I noticed is the way they felt about the Indians, but when you lived a life of, if the Indians come over, they could kill you, and they kidnap kids and shit, then I understand how a lot of people felt that way, This was told to his granddaughter in 1942, if you didn't know. So this book is 2 years short of 80 years old. And of course, I lost my place. I'm finding it right now. Almost there. I think that's where I had stopped in part 2. So now you're going to get part 2 and 3 combined. So I find this kind of history the best history. You'll never see this in a history book, ever. Okay. The trip to Springdale, Arkansas was made in a covered wagon, pulled by a team of mules. We were on the road 13 days, camping out at night wherever darkness overtook us. Ma and the 2 girls slept in the wagon, Tom and I under it. We arrived at our destination without having had any trouble, as Ma predicted. She had left the broom behind. It wasn't much of a broom anyhow, as it had worn off almost to the stick she had the bushy part tied to. The cat wasn't moved, although he was Sister Fanny's pet. Nice wind. Damn. The cat wasn't moved, although he was Sister Fanny's pet, and she set up a terrible howl when told he must be given to a neighbor. Then, as a final guarantee of safe passage, she absolutely refused to start out the day we were loaded and ready. It was Saturday. She contended no successful move was ever started on Saturday and would not budge one step that day. So it was no surprise to her that we arrived safely at our destination to be greeted by our relatives. I guess I didn't get that. Cousin Bill Pearson. What the hell? Did I flip it the wrong way? Woo. Everybody. I turned my volume down, I know that, so. Alright. Jesus, it's going backwards on it. There we go. Don't mind my phone, it's fucking backwards. Cousin Bill Pearson was among those relatives to greet us, and many were the tales of adventures he told me. According to his account, he was a member of Quantrell's band during the Civil War. He told me of being with Quantrell when his band fought a battle with a detachment of Northern soldiers at Bloomington, in the Ozark Mountains, near the Arkansas and Missouri line. The detachment numbered 150 soldiers under the command of Captain Johnson. The captain was visiting his sweetheart in Bloomington when he learned that Quantrell's band was camped nearby. He thought it would be a feather in his cap to capture the guerrilla band, as they had been harassing the Northern army considerably. His sweetheart begged him not to attempt the capture without reinforcements, but he only laughed at her fears. With his course of action planned, Captain Johnson led his soldiers in a surprise attack against Quantrell's camp. Excuse me. There we go. The main battle was fought in a narrow lane as the soldiers retreated toward the town. Quantrell himself was stationed on a knoll overlooking the battle. He credited Jesse James with killing 54 soldiers. The entire detachment was wiped out. The younger brothers, as well as the James boys, Jesse and Frank, were members of Quantrell's band. Holy crap, see, I didn't know this was in here, yo. I didn't read ahead. I am finding this shit out at the same time you are. Wow. That's kick-ass. Wow. Being guerrillas, the little band of about 75 men found it difficult to get supplies. L.A., he just talked about Jesse freaking James, man. Okay? I'm going to read real slow so you can catch up. That is awesome. Being guerrillas, the little band of about 75 men found it difficult to get supplies. See? Fuck Newsom. My cousin... Alright, I gotta get my head back. I'm doing too many conversations. So, if I back it up, you can actually see just a little bit more of it. And I'm gonna vape for a sec. I've only got 4 people watching, guys, so... This is definitely going to be a replay scope. Maybe my interest in history isn't as big in other folks, and that's okay. Not a problem. This is, hopefully I put the right hashtags out there when I post on YouTube and whatnot, that history buffs and stuff can find this. This is insanity, man. I mean, we're on page 10 of 65. And we've had lynchings and kids used as target practice and freaking Jesse James and the younger band. I mean, give me a break, dude. This is... Wow. This is a blessing, and I'm proud and happy that I can share it with whoever gets joy out of it. Because this is the real history. Not the fucking whoever won and, put the narrative on it. This real shit right here, man. I love it. And if I'm the only one that love it, guess what? I'm the only one I gotta please, Mom. I love you guys. That cool things are always better shared. Great experiences in life are better when they're shared. I've done a lot of cool shit solo, man. Sharing it with good people that appreciate it, it just makes it special. Fucking Gorilla Boy. I don't know if you've seen it up there, but holy shit, dude. One dude took out how many? 54? Is that what he said? Jesse James was killing 54 soldiers. That's freaking crazy, dude. Oh, yeah, I've got this on loan. This is not mine. What I'm going to do, though, is take a lot of pictures, and I'm going to send it in to Ernie Banks, a good friend of mine, sent me the Library of Congress veterans, these type stories, and this will be put into the, the Library of Congress record. I'm going to figure out the best way to do all that, and I'm thinking of getting all these pages laminated for him if he allows me to, because he said he wants to keep it. Yeah, look where I'm at, dude. I'm in a town of 3,000. I have no electronic gear out here at all. All right. Hey, Glenn, what's up, buddy? You're going to want to replay this. As we're reading, the names like Jesse James and the younger brothers and shit pop up. I had no idea because I told you. I read the first 4 pages of this, and then I said, you know what? I have got to do this with people that enjoy it. So, to all the replay folks that are enjoying it, hit that like button, subscribe, share it, all that good jazz. Okay. We're going to start right here. With this course of action planned, Captain Johnson led his soldiers in a surprise attack against Quantrell's camp. The main battle was fought in a narrow lane as the soldiers retreated toward the town. Quantrell himself was stationed on a knoll overlooking the battle. He credited Jesse James with killing 54 soldiers. The entire detachment, which was 150, was wiped out. The younger brothers, as well as the James boys, Jesse and Frank, were members of Quantrell's band. Being guerrillas, the little band of about 75 men found it difficult to get supplies. My cousin... Oh, stupid notification. Get out of my way. Can't read it. My cousin owed a meeting of his own father in the road and ordering him to pull off his boots and rode away without them, without ever identifying himself. I didn't read that right, or that wasn't typed right. My cousin owed a meeting his own father in the road and ordering him to pull off his fucking own father? His beard was sufficient disguise to prevent even his father recognizing him. Now that's funny. Damn. Master of disguise. See? My cousin also told me that the Quantrell disbanded the men soon after the war ended. He said that Quantrell told the men that it was time for all to quit and go home, then stopped to the edge of the circle of light cast by the campfire and said, "From now on, boys, it's good night." He dropped the assumed name of Quantrell and returned to his family in Texas to keep his word of, from now on, it is good night. He did as much for the state of Texas in helping to develop it as he had done for the South in harassing the Northern Army. See, it's reading these things that makes me go and look shit up. And that's what I'll do frickin' probably while Grayson's here, while I teach him the history of Texas. Never too early. In less than 2 years from the time we left Texas, we were homesick. One of our mules had died, but that did not change our determination to return to Texas. As soon as another mule could be bought and paid for, we loaded the few personal belongings of the family into the wagon, put up the bows and tarp, and headed back home. Wind. We moved on a farm near Brushy Chapel, a small schoolhouse not far from Georgetown, Texas. Tom and I were growing up. Ma bought us each a saddle. We had acquired a cap and ball six-shooter some way. We just needed one thing to make us feel completely rigged out. Completely rigged out. Jesus. A hat. I'm not going to read much more because I'm probably ruining it. And we'll start fresh later. I had never owned one. Sister Fanny fixed us up by plaiting wheat straw and winding the plaits around, sewing them in place to make what we considered a first-rate straw hat. I felt like a millionaire owning three such prized possessions at once. To my delight, the old fellas, I can't read that shit, attaged an all-day celebration. I gotta go back and learn my vocabulary. Attaged? Okay, let me give you that sentence again. To my delight, the Oddfellows, the Oddfellows, and that's staged. Yeah, that's better. To my delight, the Oddfellows staged an all-day celebration, something else to look up, at Round Rock, affording Tom and I, let's get it in there for you. That ain't gonna do it. There we go. Affording Tom and I an opportunity to show off our saddles and hats. It's getting almost impossible to read this through the phone. Ma made us leave the gun at home when we rode in to watch the parade of the Odd Fellows before they served the big free picnic dinner. Ma would tell us on Monday morning that if we would work good that week, she would let us off at noon Saturday to go hunting or fishing. If we worked our ass off for 5.5 days, she let us go hunting and fishing. Kids nowadays. She didn't object to our taking the cap and ball 6-shooter along. On those occasions, and we'd fired that gun so much that the cylinder... What is that? A freaking... Jeez, the cylinder finally wore so thin that when one chamber was fired, 3 or 4 more would be touched off at the same time. It sounded more like an army than 2 boys hunting. That's cool. All right, I'm going to finish this page and then we're going to call it. Learning did not mean much to me, but Ma sent me to school, and until I reached the 3rd reader, she had to pay the teacher $1.50 a month to teach me. He usually taught about 3 months at a time. Even that was too long a term for me. I didn't like school, so when the teacher whipped me for something I hadn't done, I used it as an excuse to quit. A grown girl got mad at me one recess while we were all playing ball and told the teacher I was swearing. I denied it, but the teacher wanted to whip me anyway, as a young lady was not supposed to lie. I failed to see why I should take punishment to conceal her guilt, and gathered up my books and started home. The teacher followed and finally persuaded me to return to the schoolhouse and take 10 licks. Damn, master salesman. I did not go to school again. Ma had never allowed us to curse, as I explained to the teacher, so that it was a matter of honor. I was too resentful toward the teacher to return to school. Good on you, boy. I continued walking the half-mile to Brushy Chapel on Sundays, however, to church services. It was from there that I walked home with my first sweetheart. I started across the creek bottom to visit her one Sunday wearing my best pair of buckskins. The weeds were wet, and soon the legs of my breeches were soaked and began stretching. As they stretched below my ankles, I would cut off a strip until I arrived at my girl's house. I was too busily occupied in watching my girl and listening to her pa talk to notice when my breeches began shrinking as the fire dried them. At last I noticed the old man staring at my shins. I was so terribly embarrassed when I looked down and saw my bare shins gleaming below the abbreviated buckskins that I actually shriveled up trying to shrink to fit my breeches as I beat a hasty retreat out the door. The budding romance could not survive such an ordeal, and I never called upon the young lady again. And that, my friends and fam, is part 3. It is actually part 2 and 3 combined because the nice tidbit, I don't know if you know it, Glenn, you cannot save to your phone if you have the phone call option set on Periscope from your phone. So I got episode 1 recorded, and then I let phone calls, even though I didn't get one, I had that option open. So either way, it's all going on YouTube. I appreciate you guys listening to my spiel and enjoying this awesome history with me. If you enjoyed it, subscribe, like, when it makes it to YouTube, share it with friends and fam. We just freaking, it was only like 4, 5, 6 of us, but Jesus. Live, you just freaking heard it here. Jesse James, the Younger Brothers, holy crap. This book here, I knew it's got Teddy Roosevelt in it, but, man, this is going to be fun. So, thanks for popping in, and Smooch Panda out, okay?